a question.
Yeah. Already?
Where is that picture taken?
From Unsplash, they say it's in Boston. Yeah.
Huh? So Harvard.
Yep.
And why Boston?
Because we are in Boston. Yeah. I will start. Hello, everybody, and welcome to my session, Streamlining Remote Workspaces for Developers. Hope you enjoyed the conference and all the sessions so far and learned interesting things. And let me start by introducing myself. I'm Valentin. I'm the founder of Spark Development and also software developer there. I'm in the field since 2010 and specialized in software development and operations. So whenever I need to develop something, I also look on the operations side, how to deploy it, how to optimize the deployments. And one thing that I've learned and was a precursor for this session, how to optimize the deployments and building of environments really, really fast with code. Not to go and start downloading images, building them, creating the VMs, trying to make them work from code. Yeah, and some things about me. I enjoy playing games, mostly on consoles. Do not want to invest a lot on big rigs to play the latest AA games. But also I enjoy playing, taking pictures, and maybe you have seen me around with the camera during the parties, taking some pictures. Yeah, they're from my own personal archive, and trying to also get better at that. And lastly, I enjoy going to festivals and learning about new bands and artists to share them with my friends. And a little bit about Spark Development. We are a team of 2 at the moment that focus on building software. But the part of building software is with me, and the legal business and everything is with my colleague and my partner in this business. We try to create tailored solutions for our customers in various domains, finance, warehouse, whatever they need, and try to optimize their processes and their also development processes for their teams. Beyond business, we are committed to social responsibility, supportive, positive changes in our local community. And to support everything and the goals that we propose for our company, we try to find ways to improve what we do, what our customers are doing, how they do stuff, and try to understand their needs, their developers' needs, not only their business needs. Try to see what setup works better for them and for us. And in the end, we will discuss how you can apply the things that we learned, that we showcase here in your environment, in your setup. And during the presentation, you can scan this QR code. It goes to, how it was called, the tool Menti, where there are some questions, and during the Q&A process, we will discuss those questions. So, firstly, the challenges that we saw working with remote development teams from all over the world are the fact that we have to work with different programming languages that might trigger some incompatibilities on our local machine. So, for example, I had to work on a project that uses Python 3.9, and on other project from the same customer, we had Python 3.7. Another example, we had to work on a project using Progress 11.7, and now we have to use 12.8. But we want to do not get compatibility issues or libraries that do not work together very well, on the same machine and try to find solutions on how to fix those problems. Also, the security requirements. Maybe you are working with a company that has a secured environment and you access that data through a VPN. There might be some issues on your local network, and someone attacks your infrastructure, and through that VPN, it might go to your customer's infrastructure and cause some problems there. Also, when a developer leaves the team or leaves the company, or when you are working with remote developers, the source code of your application might remain on their PCs. And that poses a great challenge, a great security challenge that, even with the NDAs and all the legal stuff, you might want to avoid. And think one that even though nowadays we have computers with large storage amounts on them, not always a laptop will have enough space for large projects. Or let's say if you're trying to move from a Windows machine to an Apple machine, their storage options aren't cheap. So based on these challenges, we started to ask ourselves, inside our company, just for me in this case, but also the developers on our customers' environments, what they really use. And the common things that I identified is the fact that they are using Unix machines, Linux, Mac OS. They are using Docker. They have a database, Progress, Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, that they use. And they need a code editor. They need access to Git, because all the code nowadays lives inside the Git repository. And mostly use and create front-end applications for their backends, and they will need a JavaScript environment to build applications and to run them, to prepare the server to serve the front-end application. So what are the approaches that we identified? The first one is the local development one, a classic approach, which has its pros and cons. So the pros are that it works offline. You don't need internet for it to work. If you are on a remote location, the connection isn't stable, you can develop. And when you have good internet connection, you can commit the code, and it's in the repository. You have full control of your tools and hardware, and you can install any SDK you need. But here is a asterisk. You need to have local administrator rights. So if you have a company-issued machine that do not have a local administrator account, you won't be able to install SDKs that easily. You can. There are some ways around it, but they do not work all the time. And most important, they are ideal for desktop and mobile development. So if you have a desktop application, usually this approach works good for you. But there are some cons. If you want a better hardware, the upgrades might be costly. So if you're working on a laptop and it's one of the new business-oriented laptops that have everything soldered on, need additional RAM, you need a new machine. That triggers the fact that getting a new machine might take a while to receive it, and then it will take around a day or two to move everything from one machine to another one. VPNs are required for access to a secure network. It's good that you have everything and you can access your remote partners' network and access the database if they use a large database, even for development. But again, you will require a network connection to access that, and the code is locally, and maybe they will try to get the database locally. And tools with different versions can cause issues. There are some solutions, at least for this last part, the tools with a different version. And that one is the dev containers. There were earlier sessions about this. What they are a way to deploy your code for developers to work on from their machine with a set of predefined tools, extensions, and everything they might need. So the best way to go with the dev containers is Visual Studio Code. Why? They have all the extensions necessary, and they were the pioneers for this thing. There are pros and cons to this approach. First one is the consistency, fast onboarding. You have .dev container.json file that is deployed, is committed in your source code, and based on that, everything is built locally and created for that developer. It is reproducible. Every developer has the same thing on their machines. It has cross-platform support, so it doesn't matter if you code on Mac, Windows, Linux. It builds the same, works the same, you use the same tools. And it is isolated. So in our case here in Progress, we have one machine that runs 11.7, another that runs 12.2, another that runs 12.8. Or if you have beta access, the future versions of Progress, you can test them isolated for your application. The cons, the performance overhead. You need a quite good machine to run them and have the power to run your code locally. So if you have 8 gigs or 16 gigs and your dev container requires 8, 12, 16 gigs of RAM to run to be powerful, you might have some issues. You require some Docker knowledge for this to work. You can use predefined machines that have Linux on them, or I think they also support the Windows containers. So if you run Docker on Windows, you can run Windows containers. But if you need something more advanced, like in your machine to have Progress installed, a specific version of Progress, a specific version of Java, you will need to create a Docker file and or Docker Compose to build this dev container. Storage space can fill easily. It's exactly like on your machine. And one caveat to be aware if you're running Docker on Windows is the fact that the VS Cell, even if it appears as being integrated with Windows, it creates a VMHX disk image that is set to 1 terabyte. So if your machine doesn't have 1 terabyte of space, you might encounter some issues on that part. Had some issues on a project. It didn't use dev containers, but it used Docker and Windows, and the machine had only 256 gigabytes, and we tried to upload files in the application that was running in Docker, and we encountered disk space errors, which Docker didn't report. It said, I have enough space. I have 1 terabyte free. Yes, and from the local development, we try to see what would be next. And that would be the remote development part. And here, you might have worked, you might have known, or you might know, the remote desktop of VDI environment. So you have a machine where everyone can connect to it. It might use Windows Server and have one Windows Server with RDS license to connect multiple users, or VMware Horizon, or whatever it's called now, where you have a virtual machine for each developer. You can use the cloud version of this, which is Amazon Workspaces or Azure Virtual Desktop. They're the same. You can build a machine with everything that it is needed and use that as a template for the other developers. And whenever someone new comes, you spin one VM like that. And the other ones that are relatively new, the Visual Studio Code with the Remote Explore set of extensions, which is Docker containers, SSH, tunneling, and there are two more. And the dev containers. What are the benefits of this? You can easily upgrade your machine and the VMs that are given to the developers. If a developer needs additional CPU, you go into the settings of the server or the VM provider, set from 2 to 4 CPU, from 8 to 16 gigs of RAM, the hardware the same. The same VM setup is available for every developer. Doesn't matter when they come, when they leave, they have it there. You can set up some cron jobs to spin down the VMs and spin up again the next morning to reduce the cost. So they will be available only, let's say, in the time frame the developers work on the project. You have quick onboarding and decommissioning and access to secure environments. So this server can be deployed inside your network. You have only access from there to the entire network via VLANs or whatever you want to, however you want to configure them. And no one from the outside can access your data, your code, or whatever you have there. The cons, higher infrastructure and licensing cost. So if you go with the Windows approach or the VMware, you have to pay the licensing to them. First, you need the hardware, and the hardware might be expensive to buy. And then, on top of that, you add the licensing from those providers. You can go through an open source approach by using Proxmox, but still they do not recommend going to production without production licensing from them to offer you support on different issues. You require a dedicated system administrator to manage the server, manage the infrastructure, the network, and everything that's there. If you develop for Apple products, for iPhones, iPads, even for Mac, you will need Mac or Apple hardware. And it is really, really hard to virtualize them. You can do it. You need a Mac Pro with a beefier hardware, but it's not that recommended to do it. If you want to virtualize macOS on non-Apple hardware, you are in a bit of a legal trouble with Apple because they do not allow through the licensing they have. Another thing, you need strong and stable internet access. If you want to go and program remotely and you have a bad internet connection, you will see that you type something and it will appear in a minute or two on the screen. And it can be frustrating. Yes. And with all these pros and cons, with the remote part, we tried something for one of our customers to go with the VSCode with the Remote Explorer part. Why we tried this? Their project was using Python, was using Celery for scheduling tasks to do some things, and those tasks were very important for the end customer. And we tried local development and failed because for some of the developers, Celery wasn't starting up. For others, it was starting, but the software didn't send the emails that we needed. Configuring some paths where to store the folders wasn't that obvious for everyone. So I said, okay, we will build a Linux machine. There we will install everything, configure everything. We created a sample user, where we installed Visual Studio Code Server, the part that is required for the Visual Studio Code extension to work. We set up environment variables. Every piece of software that they needed, database, Python, salary, configuration, places where to store the data. And then, okay, you go to this IP, enter your credentials, and start your Visual Studio Code. And since then, this was around 2022 that we started, and they are still using this approach right now. They do not have that much to develop there, but it's good to have it in a single place, and whenever they need it, they spin up the machine, the developers connect and deploy the code. Build the code, test it, and then deploy it. And the last approach that we tried, the cloud development approach. And here we tried to identify several solutions. The first one that we looked was GitPod, or how it's called now, ONA. We have Coder, we have tried Harness, Firebase Studio, Eclipse Che, and GitHub Codespaces. Why we looked into this? With the rise of power on tablets and how good they are trying to become, and they are becoming. For example, the iPad with the M processor, you can now do a lot of things on them, similar to a MacBook or a Mac Air. And yeah, going on the road, it's easier for us to bring a tablet, take some notes, and if needed, if there are things that need to be changed fast, go into one of these, spin up a VM or a dev container, and from there we can start to work easily on the code. The future, cloud and web IDEs, they are fast, they have a standardized onboarding on them, they provide on-demand environments. You need them, you spin, you code, whenever it's done, spin down, clear, and your resources are available for anything else. Or if you go and deploy it into AWS or Azure, the costs are only when you use that VM. Can blend with on-prem and cloud setups. We right now are trying to deploy a solution using Coder on our local environment and our local infrastructure using Proxmox, besides AWS. Costs, visibility, and control, you can see who used what for how long. Again, like in the case of remote, costs can scale up quickly. So if you need a large, good VM, good machine, it is expensive, and you have to pay for it. It requires Kubernetes or Docker knowledge, because it's better to have a dev container or a setup where you use containers than to go directly to a VM. You risk a vendor lock-in, so in case you use GitPod, it will be harder to get your configuration from GitPod to use it anywhere else. Same for Harness, same for Coder. You define there, and you cannot use them in Che or Workspaces or Codespaces or whatever else there is. If you have a large team, you need a high performance cluster. Lots of RAM, lots of CPUs, lots of disk for them. And at least in the case of Coder, and I think also for Harness, you need a little bit of Terraform or Ansible knowledge to build the definition files, the template files for your environments. But I will show you in a bit more about this. So as I said, we were looking at Coder as a solution. Why? Because it is self-hosted, and we have control to everything that is there. The machine sizes, the templates, where it is deployed, how many instances of it we can deploy. In our case, it is deployed in a container with a Docker swarm behind, and we can scale it to, in case one of the clusters, one of the nodes in the cluster of Docker swarm fails, we can spin up quickly another one, and everything is there. No need to set up it again and everything like that. It has great support for various IDEs. You can integrate the JetBrains Gateway and from there to connect with IntelliJ, WebStorm, PHP Storm, Rider, whenever they have. Or you can go with Visual Studio Code. And you can also start up a Visual Studio Code in your browser. It has a well-featured Community Edition version, so you don't have to pay for each developer a license to use Coder. And you can integrate it with Microsoft Entra, GitHub, AWS, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, whatever you want to provide you with user-controlled user access. So you have the users locally on your Coder instance, but also you can use users from Microsoft Azure, Microsoft AD or Entra ID, how it is called nowadays. Workspaces are created using Terraform, and you can combine those workspaces to be deployed in AWS, Azure, Proxmox, Google, Cloud, wherever you want. And a little demo. Here I pre-recorded it, but I will show you live. Yes, so I will log myself out from here first. So this is the first page. It pre-filled my user, but that's not actually the user that I will use to connect. I will use this OpenID Connect button, which will take me to the Microsoft website. Check my ID. I already am logged in on my Microsoft account. And it goes to this Workspaces dashboard. From here, I have already a workspace available that is created in AWS. And I can start it on VS Code desktop, on Code Server, WebStorm, or even I can open a terminal. If I hit the terminal, it should open this, and I say LL and see the contents of my VM. Yes?
Everything that you're showing right now is actually on your local infrastructure?
This one is in AWS.
Okay.
So it's running a EC2 machine. I will close that second tab. I can open, as I said, the web VS Code on browser. And it will open my project. I already had some things to work on. It has opened up unit test. Here, I can go and sync the changes from cloud. I can hit pull. And it pulled me everything. It asked me if I want to git fetch periodically. Okay. I can go, I already run some tests. I can do them again. And everything that we see in this browser runs on that server, on that EC2 machine. While the tests are running, I will come back here and create a new workspace, which will be a plain EC2 Linux machine, nothing else installed there. I already also have a template for Node.js. Click the button. It asks me some information about the workspace. I will hit the suggested name that they have there. I will select 2 vCPUs, 8 GB of RAM. I will leave the IntelliJ IDEA and deploy it in North Virginia. And now it will start building my workspace. And here I can see the logs of that building process. First, it goes to the planning phase of Terraform, because in Terraform we have to phase is 2 steps. One is the planning to check that everything is there, everything that you need is filled. And then the apply phase where it starts doing the task that you gave. So here we can see that my tests are still running. Some of them already passed. We are waiting for others to run. But the new deployment of the second workspace doesn't influence the existing workspace that is already working there. And you can see here an estimation of time. This is based on previous runs and tries to tell you, OK, it will be ready in 2 minutes. So it plans to add 7 items. I will show you those items in a bit after the workspace is done.
Have you tried this with progress?
Haven't tried it with progress. I couldn't find anymore a link to download the Linux version of 12.8 on the website. You can have the classroom, but there it's the Windows version. But it's still, I will show you in a bit the scripts behind the templates. And if you've deployed on Linux progress before, it's very similar to what you've done. You automate it inside the scripts. You'll only have to provide it from where to download. We want to, this is a challenge that we currently have with Proxmox. We want to prepare 2 types of deployments. One that uses a VM, a predefined template with a VM, and one that uses Linux containers, LXC, where you have everything that done already there. You pack it in a tar archive, and then it can be used as a template for other containers running in Proxmox. Yeah. So right now, the second container, the second workspace installs its dependencies. Everything worked fine. You can have a timeline to see where it stayed the most and what took the most to do. And if we start another code server, here, the existing one, you see that it finished the testing with some unhandled error. And here I have a new coder. Yes, I trust it, where I can do whatever I want. New file.
These newly created workspaces on the same EC2 machine?
No, it's a different EC2 machine. So each workspace is a different EC2 machine. And you can install there on this machine different extensions. Manually, in the case of this second workspace. So let's say open Edge. And I can install the formatter. I can install ABL. This one, the Progress Open Edge ABL extension, or you can have them already pre-installed, as I have them here in the second workspace, but I will leave them to do the installation. And I said about the templates. Let's hope the internet is still working.
It requires a constant internet connection, or is that an offline?
It requires internet connection if you deploy it in cloud, but or if you deploy it inside your network, it requires internet network connection to your local infrastructure.
When you use your ABL extension, do you need the language server?
I think it will install it automatically. You will need progress to actually run and compile the code. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, yeah, the language server is part of the extension, but you do need progress for it to install
okay.
as well in point 2 for compiling.
Yeah, it doesn't want to work from there, but there are the registry.coder.com where you have a lot of Terraform modules that you can use and examples. And I'll go to the templates one, and so it looks something like this. First, you have the configuration that you saw on screen where I selected the kind of where I selected the region where I want my machine to be deployed. I also the instance type or the instance size of the machine that Amazon provides, and in this case the Ubuntu VM or the base for this. And here in the coder agent startup script, you can do the setup of the machine. Install dependencies, install progress, run a setup for the machine to join a network, to install OpenVPN or WireGuard or whatever you want to have it running and available in there. This metadata is information that coder fetches from the machine to see how it is running, if it's in optimal parameters, if the CPU is running to the maximum, all those things. And here, various other modules like the code server, the Visual Studio Code to run in the browser, the JetBrains part, the Cloud Init part for the Unix, and everything that for Linux and everything that's there. And yeah, these are some of the things that sampled templates. Let me check a bit. My server might have crashed the Proxmox server. Yeah. So yeah, this is coder. This is what you can do here. It is the EC2 template that we customized a bit for our node environment with the variables and the deploy and everything that is there. And at the end, when everything is done, development is done, you can stop the VM. Here I clicked a lot of times on the stop button to see what does it do, but it only triggers the stop once and does the same things that it has done for the apply, but in reverse order. So it first uninstalls the things and then decommissions the machine. So these are the three approaches that we tried. We researched. We tried to discuss them with some of our customers to see if they are interested in them, want to migrate, so try to see whatever fits their needs. Now, how to choose what's right for you? First, identify the type of application you are building. If you are building a desktop application, the cloud approach or the dev containers, it's not the thing for you. You won't be able to build the UI in cloud or in a browser for a desktop application. If you have an API first or a web-based application, then you can try the cloud approach and the remote development using the dev containers or Visual Studio Code with a remote extension. Then assess the hardware and budget that you have. If you already have a powerful server, then you might want to try the remote approach, Linux VMs or containers for this case. Or in case of the desktop application, try to install a Windows Server or Ubuntu where you enable the remote desktop for multiple users. Then match the needs to the approach. So here, see, if you are API first, you have the budget for a good server, or you already have that good server, then you may want to try to learn Ansible or Terraform and apply it not only for the dev environment, but maybe later for your infrastructure. So if you want to build and spin up a progress server, a server for progress for another customer, or you need more powerful, okay, I run this Terraform script and it powers up a server. I do not have to enter on that server to do anything. And last but not least, pilot everything with a small team. See, get their feedback, get what they do, if it fits their needs, if everything is up, ready, they do not encounter problems, they can start the environment really easily and really quickly, and all that stuff. And in case of here, I would suggest you to try going to Visual Studio Code. There are lots of extensions. They are still building extensions, and people are building extensions for OpenEdge and for Progress. You already have access to various AI agents. You can integrate them locally with Olama and use your hardware if you don't want to use the cloud available one for the AI agents. You can use Copilot. It's already enabled in Visual Studio Code. There are lots and lots of things that you can do, and I would suggest you to try give Visual Studio Code if you haven't done it already. And the key takeaways from this, there isn't a single best solution. You will have to decide based on application type, team size, budget, what you can do, what is a good approach for you. Local development gives you flexibility and control, but raises consistency and security concerns. Remote development, centralized environment, simplified onboarding, but higher costs for the hardware, network dependency, you cannot do it that easily. In cloud development, faster onboarding, consistent tooling, but requires careful cost management and attention to vendor lock-in. So now going to the Q&A, but before going to the Q&A, I will have the same session in Valencia on Friday at 10:15. And together with Wayfair, I will have another session about integrating your application with OneDrive and SharePoint on Thursday. So yeah, see you there. And going back to the questions. And as I said earlier, let me go back a bit. We have the Mentimeter. If you go to menti.com and use that code, you can answer some of the questions. Let me check if I can add again the QR code. Where it was? Here it was. So you can see it here.
What's that code for?
These slides where I have some questions and trying to see what kind of application are you developing. Trying to suggest you different ways on the approach to do. Next, what technologies are you currently using? I know we are at the Progress Conference OpenEdge. It will be OpenEdge. But if you have anything else besides that, React, PHP, thanks, Ovidio. I don't know if you're using .NET, Excel. Maybe you're using some things that generates Excel or open Excel for you or any other things? JavaScript, thanks. And how many developers are in your team? Why? Because different solutions might apply to, might require different approaches to this. And last but not least, if you have any questions for me. Yes?
One of our main tool is PDSOE.
Yes.
Do you think it's possible to run PDSOE in a cloud environment?
You can run it in a cloud environment if you're using or going to use Azure Web Desktop, Virtual Desktop, or Amazon Workspaces.
But the coder environment you are showing it's possible?
For those, yes, because those are deployed on Linux-based, and you open up a Visual Studio Code either on your local machine or in the browser. So PDSOE, it's Eclipse-based, and I think it uses a lot of desktop things to render everything. But in the future, maybe another solution would be to use a remote desktop solution like TeamViewer, or there is something new called RustDesk, where you can run a remote session, remote control session to your machine, to a VM in your web browser. You can try also RustDesk. It's free. You don't have licensing requirements. You can install the server on your infrastructure and connect to that server, and everyone can connect to there. If there are no other questions, you can contact me here. And yeah, we can still find me around the conference, and we can have a chat. Thank you.